This is your plan. This is your strategy. There is a man in charge of the world's largest economy right now who is so unpredictable that if you are not planning for the worst case scenario, you are being irresponsible. All right, everybody, welcome to 2026. We thought we'd do something new, different, and interesting at the beginning of this year, really as we lean into our content strategy. So here's what I want to share with you today. For those of us who are watching this, you're running your own business and you're beginning to do your thinking, your planning, and your strategizing for this year. In particular, if you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, and you already run your business, you do your own thing, and you are thinking about how are you going to scale your business for this year. There are three metrics that I want to invite you to measure, not only at the beginning of the year, but throughout the year, and then toward the end of this year. Now, word of warning here, when you first hear about these metrics, they're going to sound simple until you actually start thinking about these metrics and what these metrics actually mean. So I thought what I would do is I'll take a quick 15 minutes and explain these metrics to you, explain why they matter, and then most importantly, explain to you why you need to keep a tally on them. Now, it doesn't matter what your business is or at what stage you're at. You know, in the work we do, we see companies who are making $1 million US and companies who are making $100 million US. And in each and every single one of those businesses, for sure, it really is about measuring each of these metrics at every single stage and turn. So whether you're a personal trainer watching this conversation and you just have, 10 clients that you work with every single year or every single month rather, and you're training those clients and you think about how do you scale and take your business to next, this is going to be relevant to you. If you're a content creator, this is going to be relevant to you. If you buy stock and you sell it on an online e-commerce platform, this is going to be relevant to you. Running a consulting company, relevant to you. You're a mid-tier stage business looking for growth, it's going to be relevant to you. Let me just say one last thing. So in my experience doing the work that we do, that things typically seem easy until you're actually doing that thing, and then you realize it looks easy, but it's very, very different from executing it. So here we go. Three metrics that I want you to measure this year. Don't dare me. I promise you these actually matter. First metric. Sales. Now I know what you're thinking. Well, duh, of course I'm going to measure sales, right? But remember, one of my favorite things to do when I work with entrepreneurs is to help them build an income statement, right? And when you build an income statement, what an income statement does, or the other word we call an income statement is a profit and loss, is it shows you at the end of a trading cycle whether or not you've made money. How do you build an income statement? Remember, the first line item on an income statement is revenue. And revenue is price times quantity. The second line item is cost of goods sold, which is the cost of those goods times the quantity. And these quantities, of course, will be the same. Why? Because for every product that you sold, it must be the same quantity. And then, of course, the difference of these is gross profit. And the gross profit is the difference between revenue versus COGS. All right. This is basic, simple accounting. You should know this by now. If you watch any of my masterclasses, you know this is always where we start. Why am I sharing this with you? When I say you've got to measure your sales, most entrepreneurs don't get this right. Sales is fundamentally two things. It's the price at which you sell something and the number of those things that you sell. So let's break it down. If sales is the price at which I'm selling something and the quantity at which of these things that I sell, right, spelled wrong here, but the quantity of these things that I sell, it means that if I'm going to increase my sales, I have one of two options. Either I'm going to increase my price, or I'm going to increase my quantity, or I'm going to increase both. Now, there are some businesses that are immediately limited. In my public speaking business, we issued at the end of last year, we had an unbelievable year. I did 84 flights, over 500,000 kilometers that I flew, over 21 hours that I spent in the air, and we traveled to 32 countries. It's actually available. We published it. You can go and check on my social medias. What is my limitation? My limitation is because in my public speaking business, I've got to stand on stage and speak. I only have a certain number of times I can do that. So even though I might want to grow the quantity, this is finite, which means the only way I make more money is if I charge price. But even my ability to push up the price is also limited because there is a point at which beyond that price, I'm just not going to get customers phoning and saying, we want to work with him. They'll sure will see value, but they might not be able to afford it. Does that make sense? So what's really important for you is to think about, as you are driving your growth of your business this year, which of these struggles do you want to win? Which brings me to the second point here. It's a game, guys. So you've got to figure out what your composition is. If you focus on winning the price war, then you're going to sell more quantity, which means you're going to be busier, you're going to need more stock. If you're a consultant, you're going to need more hours. But if you focus on winning the quantity war, then you're going to be limited on price. You just got to think about which of these that you actually want to win on. I can't stress enough how important it is at the beginning of the year to decide which battle do you want to win. Here's why this matters. Let's assume I want to win the price battle. And what I actually want to do is I want to be able to charge more than my competitors. Well, if I want to charge more than my competitors, then what have I got to do? It means I've got to increase the value of my product. And value, by the way, is both tangible and intangible. So this value can be perceived. So how do you get that right? Well, you got to ask yourself, what are the things that your market and your customers understand to matter, that they are willing to pay you more for the same thing because they perceive the value to be more? This has everything to do with your marketing, your communications, your social media. This is why I start here, because a lot of us start the beginning of the year and we're like, well, I'm going to focus more on my social media. I'm going to post more. I'm going to post more product pictures. I'm going to post more client testimonials. Yes, sounds great, but what does it do for your sales? Because if I can't link that social media activity, that marketing activity, that promotional activity, that PR activity to sales, then what am I doing it for? Okay, so you're sitting on 100,000 followers on Instagram, but your sales haven't grown in 5 years. So what did you do it for? For likes and comments? Come on. So you've got to be very clear when you're growing your marketing that it drives perceived value so that you can increase the price. Otherwise, why are you doing it for? Just want to be famous, go and be an actor. Like, go attend auditions and get known, right? Like, that's not particularly complex. It's not easy, it's just not complex. Okay. The alternative is, I want to grow my quantity. This is, I want to sell more. Okay. This is literally the difference between the Bugatti strategy and the Amazon strategy. I was at, middle of last year, I traveled to London. And so I went to a dealership there that sells several like luxury cars. But one of the luxury cars they sell is Bugattis. And I'm chatting to the manager of the branch, because I just went and I walked in and I was like, yo, I'm a car guy, I love cars, etc., etc. Do you mind if I have a look? And they had two on the floor and they had a beautiful Chiron that was like a beautiful pearl blue. So I'm chatting to him about this beautiful Bugatti Chiron, and he's telling me about the car and the relationship with Jacob & Co., the watch, etc. And he's telling me all about the story of Bugatti and the car and the watch and the relationship and the branding and the lineage and all of these things. And all the reason he's telling me this was to say, we don't measure ourselves on the number of cars we sell. We measure ourselves on our ability to drive perceived value so that we can sell the car more expensively. Now, a Bugatti is an engineering feat, guys. I hope you understand that. A car weighs over 2 tons and it'll do well over 350 kilometers per hour. It's an engineering feat. But Bugatti doesn't make as much money as Toyota. Why? Because even though Bugatti has a better perception and sells for more, Toyota sells more cars. This is a different strategy. And so the question for you is, are you building a Toyota or are you building a Bugatti? Right? Because if you are building a Toyota and you want to be focused on quantity, then it brings me to the second thing you want to be measuring in this year in your business. Let me just say, this is where businesses go to die. Cash flow. Cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. It all sounds great until you're not making money. Cash flow. Cash flow. And not just cash flow, but you've got to be clear on how do you manage the net cash flow in your business. So what does that mean? What are you going to be worried about? You're going to be worried about your working capital. You've got to be worried about your working capital. For those of you who didn't do accounting, when you're doing your working capital requirement and working capital cycle, it basically is your inventory, the amount of stock you're holding, it's your accounts payable, how long it takes for you to pay your suppliers, and your accounts receivable, how long it takes for you to receive money from your suppliers. So let's run the math. Assume My customers pay me after 15 days, right? I get money into my bank account after 15 days of selling a product. But I pay my suppliers 7 days after I've bought the product. Let's think about what that means. It means I get the product today. After 7 days, I have to pay my supplier. John's being paid. But then I've got to wait an additional 8 days before Michael pays me back. So it means even though I'm going to grow my sales, I'm constantly going to have a negative working capital cycle. Because for every unit of inventory that I sell, I only get paid after 15 days, but I have to pay after 7 days. Now, why is this important? You're starting the year 2026. I've got these big dreams, these massive things I want to do, this big business I want to build, all of this incredible stuff. Yeah, sounds great. And I want to double my revenue. Okay, so how are you going to do it? Well, I'm going to increase my price and increase my quantity. I came to tell you, you can't do both. Pick a struggle. Now, that's not an absolute term, but it is relative. Does that mean, can you increase price and quantity? Sure. But the greater the extent to which you increase the one, typically it has an inverse relationship on the other. Then you go, well, I want to do all of this. And by the way, for me to grow my business, I need more cash flow. Okay, great. So how are you going to do that? Now, in a services business, you don't have to necessarily worry about inventory, but you do have to worry about your accounts payable and your accounts receivable. For sure. For sure. So watching your cash flow in this year, 2026, is going to be a big one. I want to say something else that has a lot to do with the geopolitics right now. You're seeing this stuff happening all over the world, man. We're seeing countries getting raided with presidents, sitting presidents getting removed. We're seeing oil tankers getting seized. I guarantee you, we are so close. We are so on the precipice of a major global conflict that if you're not thinking about how do you manage cash, you're going to be in trouble this year. I have a theory, and my theory is 2026 is going to be the year to hold on to cash because we are less than 2 standard deviations away from another 2020 lockdown style of stuff where something happens in the world and it affects how your business operates. So you've got to be thinking very carefully about how you're planning around your cash flow. I am fascinated by how many entrepreneurs don't think about these things. And so for many entrepreneurs, they think cash flow is the amount of money they have in the bank. No, that's cash. In fact, the accounting term for it is cash on hand. That's not cash flow, because the key part here is this word, flow. Money is a cycle, right? The way that I explain it to my own team, I always say to my team, money is like water. You ever seen water? I have this thing like, middle of the year in my house, the pool pump broke. You guys are going to love the story. So the pool pump breaks, and my pool was like beautiful and blue, etc. And so the pool was covered. And the pool pump broke, and we had some acid and chlorine and stuff. And over time, the acid and chlorine finished. The gardener didn't replace it. We didn't fix the pool pump. And then months later, there was like this stench around the pool. So I went and removed the pool cover, and the water was green. Same water. What happened? The water didn't move. It didn't flow. In a business, it's the same. Cash has to flow in a business. There must be activity. Money must come in, money must go out. And a lot of entrepreneurs who are early stage don't have the mindset for this. Money leaving your business isn't a bad thing. It's how much leaves and how much comes back. Cash has to flow. That is the nature of running a business. So the first thing, sales, critical. And you got to choose the fight you want to win on your sales. The second thing, cash flow. And you've got to choose what's going to be driving your cash flow. What's going to be driving your cash flow? Okay? These are the 2 things that you're going to have to measure. And then the third. And I write this one in blue because it matters. Reserves. Get ready for a year where there's enough SHIT for your business to go under. There is a man in charge of the world's largest economy right now who is so unpredictable that if you are not planning for the worst case scenario, you are being irresponsible. So you're watching this, and I came to tell you, you need to start building up your reserves. Sell more. Once you sell more, collect more cash. Once you collect more cash, build up your reserves. I came to tell you this is so important, and that's why when you follow the flow of the income statement, it ends at the bottom with retained income. The accountants in this room will know, right? because you get to retained income after you declare your dividends, and retained income is what builds up your reserves. Build up reserves. The rule that we've just passed in the business, we've said 10%. What's that mean? 10% of every single invoice that we are issuing, we're immediately removing that money and putting it into our reserve fund. We already have reserves, but we're just building up that reserve fund. Because I have a theory, 2026 is not going to be like any year that we've seen since 2020. And I remember what happened in 2020. I'm not going through that stuff again. So, this is your plan. This is your strategy. Hit me up in the comment section and tell me, which of these do you think you need to improve on from last year? Is it how much you're selling, right? Is it how much cash you're generating? Or is it how much reserves you're sitting on? And whichever one of these that you know you need to improve on from last year, focus and understand the relationship between these three. I'll see you on the other side of this. Cheers.